This happened 2 years ago. I used to love hiking alone. I know that probably already puts me in the "this guy's asking for it" category, but I genuinely enjoyed the solitude, the quiet, the sound of birds instead of emails. I worked in IT for a major software company, constantly surrounded by screens, notifications, and artificial light. So twice a year, I'd rent a remote cabin, shut off my phone, and just exist. This story takes place in late October 2 years ago. I'd booked a cabin in a remote stretch in the mountains. It was described as off-grid but secure. Solar power, wood stove, filtered rainwater system, no cell reception, no Wi-Fi. Just the way I liked it. The drive took longer than expected. Unpaved forest roads that felt more like animal trails than anything made for vehicles. By the time I arrived, the sun was dipping low behind the ridge. The cabin was tiny but solid. Thick wooden beams, a stone chimney, and a wraparound porch facing a dense tree line. The host had left a handwritten note on the kitchen table. "Enjoy your stay. There's firewood out back. Don't worry if you hear noises in the woods. Animals roam at night. Lock the door." I thought nothing of it at the time. I made a fire, heated a can of chili, and settled in with a book. That night, around 2 a.m., I woke up suddenly. Not because of a noise, but because of the silence. You know how sometimes complete silence can feel louder than sound? That was this. No wind, no owls, nothing. Just thick, smothering quiet. Then, crack. A single twig snapped behind the cabin. I sat up in bed, heart pounding. It could have been anything, a deer, a raccoon, a branch falling. But I didn't hear movement, just that one sound and then nothing. Still, it was enough to keep me awake until sunrise. The next day, I decided to explore. I hiked a few miles out, found a creek, and sat by it for a while. I felt better in the daylight. Whatever that noise was, it hadn't happened again. But when I got back to the cabin, I noticed something strange. Footprints. In the dirt just behind the back wall. Prints that weren't there when I left that morning. They were boot prints. Big ones. Larger than mine, with a deeper heel like someone heavy had been standing there for a while. They led from the woods to the back wall of the cabin. Then they stopped. I followed the trail backward a few feet, but the leaves and bush made it hard to track. No clear path in. No clear path out. That night, I triple-checked the door lock. I dragged a chair in front of it, just in case. Around 1:30 a.m., I heard movement again. This time, several distinct footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. Then, breathing. I swear to God I could hear someone breathing outside the wall behind my bed. I didn't move. I barely breathed myself. I was frozen, eyes wide, listening. It went on for what felt like forever. And then it stopped. Not gradually, like someone walking away. It just stopped. I didn't sleep at all that night. In the morning, I went out to check again. Nothing. No footprints. No signs of animals. Just that heavy feeling like I was being watched. I wanted to leave. I considered packing up right then, but the roads were dangerous in daylight. Worse at night. And part of me still thought maybe I was overreacting. That afternoon, I heard something I'll never forget. A voice. A man's voice coming from deep in the woods. Not yelling, not screaming, just saying, "Hello? Can you help me?" It was soft, shaky, but wrong, because it didn't sound panicked. It sounded like someone pretending to be panicked, like an actor reading lines. I stepped off the porch and shouted back, "Who's there?" No reply, just silence. Then again, "Hello, I'm lost, please help." Closer this time. I didn't move, I just stood there, heart pounding. Something in my gut told me not to respond again. The voice repeated the same thing, word for word, like a recording. "Hello, I'm lost. Please help." Then silence. That night, I didn't sleep. I didn't turn off the lights. I kept the fire going and sat with a heavy fireplace poker in my lap. At some point around 4 a.m., I heard scratching on the back wall. Not a raccoon scratching in a tree kind of sound. This was slower, deliberate, like fingernails on wood. And then breathing again. Closer this time, right outside the window. I didn't look. I couldn't. When the sun finally came up, I threw my stuff into the truck and left without breakfast. As I was backing up, I saw something in the rearview mirror. A man, standing just at the edge of the woods, still watching. He was tall, wearing what looked like a heavy coat. I couldn't make out his face. When I looked back, he was gone. I told the cabin host afterward. He brushed it off as local wildlife and your imagination. But I've never gone back, and I never will. Whatever was out there wasn't human, and I'm terrified to think what would have happened if I'd opened the door. I've never been the type to believe in the paranormal. I'm the kind of guy who watches horror movies and rolls my eyes, telling myself it's all special effects and over-the-top writing. But what happened to me last fall changed all of that, and I haven't spoken about it out loud until now. It started when my older brother Jason invited me on a weekend cabin trip near Boundary Waters, up by the Minnesota-Canada border. He said it was one of those off-grid rentals with no Wi-Fi, no cell reception, no nearby towns. Just pure nature, isolation, and a chance to reset. I had just gone through a rough breakup and needed to clear my head, so I said yes. I figured we'd spend a few days fishing, drinking beer, and trading dumb stories by the fire. But I wasn't prepared for what we'd actually encounter. The cabin was about a 40-minute hike from where we parked. It was nestled right next to a narrow lake that stretched for miles, so long you couldn't see the end in either direction. The water was black and still, and the trees around it seemed too tall, too dense. I remember feeling uneasy the second we arrived, like something was watching us from the woods. Jason brushed it off when I mentioned it. Dude, that's just the quiet. You're not used to it. Give it a few hours. The cabin itself was old but solid. One room, 2 beds, a small kitchenette, a wood-burning stove, and a single lantern that hung from the ceiling. There was no electricity or plumbing. Just an outhouse, some candles, and a beat-up canoe. We settled in, unpacked, cracked open beers, and started a small fire by the shore. That night, as we sat by the lake, I noticed something strange across the water. A faint light, like a lantern, flickering between the trees. Jason noticed it too. Probably another cabin, he said, but we both knew that wasn't right. The guy who rented us the place had made it clear, there's no one else out there. Day 2. The footprints. The next morning I woke up early. Jason was still snoring, so I stepped outside to pee and stretch my legs. That's when I saw the footprints. Bare feet, human. Dozens of them. Leading from the edge of the lake to the cabin. And then circling it. The prints weren't there the night before. I woke Jason up and showed him. He tried to laugh it off at first. Probably just some kids screwing around, locals. But we both knew how remote the cabin was. There were no roads, no trails, no signs of life for miles. And the prints weren't just random, they were deliberate, patterned, as if someone had been pacing around our cabin all night. That night, the atmosphere shifted. We didn't drink. We didn't sit by the lake. We just stayed inside, doors locked, guns out. Jason always brought a .22 with him on trips like this. Around 11 p.m., the light came back, but this time it wasn't across the lake. It was on our side, about 20 yards into the trees, flickering between the trunks, moving. Jason turned off our lantern and we both crouched low by the window watching it. It was like someone was carrying an old kerosene lantern, weaving through the trees. Slowly. At one point, it stopped. Dead still. Then we heard the sound of wet feet slapping against the earth. Approaching the cabin. Jason whispered, "Get your boots. We're not staying here." But then something knocked on the front door. Not a loud bang, just 3 soft, steady knocks, like a polite visitor. We didn't move. We didn't speak. Whoever or whatever was outside just stood there. We couldn't see a shadow, no breathing, no footsteps walking away. Just silence. Eventually, after what felt like an hour, Jason whispered, "They're gone." We waited until morning to move. The second the sun was up, we packed everything we could into our bags and bolted for the car. Jason carried the rifle the whole way. I kept looking behind us, expecting to see someone standing in the trees, but we made it to the car. And just as Jason turned the key in the ignition, that same flickering light appeared again, this time on the ridge above the road. We didn't wait. We drove 5 hours straight back to Minneapolis and didn't say a word the entire ride. Jason hasn't talked about it since. If I bring it up, he changes the subject. I did some research later and found out that a string of cabins along that lake were torn down in the 90s due to a series of disappearances. Hikers, campers, people vanishing without a trace. No one knows what happened, but locals still talk about the Lantern Watcher, some entity that lures people into the woods with a false sense of safety and then takes them. I still don't know what we saw, but I know this. We weren't supposed to be there, and whatever was outside that cabin, it didn't want us to leave. I should preface this by saying I'm not one to believe in the paranormal. I'm 36 years old, a construction foreman, married, father of 2, and what you'd call solidly grounded. But this happened to me when I was 24, and I haven't spoken about it to anyone in over a decade. Not even my wife. Back in 2011, my 3 closest college buddies and I planned a weekend cabin trip in the Adirondacks. It was a post-graduation thing. One last hurrah before real life split us in different directions. There was me, Kevin, Dylan, and Mike. The cabin belonged to Kevin's uncle. Remote. No Wi-Fi, barely a cell signal, no neighbors for miles. Just dense woods, a lake, and the silence. It was perfect. We arrived on a Friday afternoon. Everyone was in good spirits. We unpacked, started drinking early, grilled burgers, played cards. That first night was honestly one of the best I can remember. We stayed up late telling stories, joking, passing around a cheap bottle of bourbon. But the next morning, something felt off. I woke up groggy and disoriented. I couldn't explain it, but something about the air felt heavier. Like the silence itself had changed overnight. I assumed it was just a hangover. Kevin and Dylan were already outside, skipping rocks by the lake. Mike wasn't around. I figured he was still passed out, but when I checked the rooms, nothing. His bag was gone, his jacket too, but his boots were still by the door. We called out for him for nearly an hour. Walked the woods, the trail back to the car. No response, no footprints, no signs of struggle. We even joked at one point that he must have gone to town to grab more beer or something. But the car was still there, and Mike didn't drive. That night, it got worse, and I swear I heard someone walking around outside the cabin around 2 a.m. Slow, heavy steps crunching through the underbrush. At first I thought maybe it was a bear, but the way it moved, it circled the cabin, then stopped beneath the window near where I was sleeping. I held my breath, waiting. The handle on the cabin door turned slowly, but it didn't open. The door was locked. I crept over and peeked out the side window, just a crack. No one was there, but in the morning, there were wet footprints on the wooden porch. Bare feet. We were shaken. No one admitted to hearing anything, but I could tell the guys were spooked too. We tried calling Mike's phone again, straight to voicemail. Dylan wanted to call the police, but Kevin convinced us to wait. Said maybe Mike had gone to meet someone, that he'd come back. But by Sunday morning, Kevin himself was gone. His bed was made, shoes still by the door, jacket missing. This time, there were no footprints, just absence, like he had been erased. Dylan and I lost it. We shouted his name, tore through the trees yelling. We found nothing. It felt like the woods were watching us, like we were in a place we weren't supposed to be. We packed up that afternoon and left. Didn't speak a word the entire drive back to the city. When we got home, I called Kevin's parents, terrified. I thought they'd be panicked. But here's the thing. They acted like they had no idea who Kevin was. I repeated his full name, described him, told them I was with him at their cabin. They said they didn't have a son named Kevin. No nephew either. They'd owned no cabin in the Adirondacks. They lived in Florida and had for decades. I hung up, shaken to my core. Then I called Dylan. He picked up, but he sounded strange. "Who is this?" he asked. "It's me from the trip." "Kevin's gone, man. You know this." There was a pause, then he said, "What trip?" And he hung up. It's been 12 years. I still don't understand what happened. Here's the most disturbing part. I went back to look through old Facebook photos from that year. There were some from the weekend. Me by the lake, the cabin porch, the fire pit. I remember the moments vividly. But in every single photo, there were only 3 of us. Me, Dylan, and Mike. No Kevin. There are moments I lie awake at night trying to recall what Kevin looked like. The sound of his voice. But it's like something is actively scrubbing him from my memory. Like he never existed at all. But I know what I saw, what I felt. There were 4 of us in that cabin, and now there's just me.